Professor Brewer, together with various other research bodies, you have developed a potato that provides the raw material for a biodegradable plastic. What kind of potato is it, and what is its purpose? It is a starch potato that is normally grown to produce starch. We inserted a gene from cyanobacteria into this potato. They produce a substance that can be used as an alternative to hygroscopic polyacrylates, such as those used in cement or nappies. It can also replace phosphate in washing powder. The substance is usually manufactured from petroleum. We can, however, also obtain it from bacteria or from these potatoes. Because of the genetic modification, our potatoes are now able to produce relatively large quantities of the plastic. So the potato can be used as a bioreactor to produce industrial raw materials. Does it make financial sense when compared with other methods, such as the use of microorganisms? It becomes worthwhile when the plastic is obtained as a byproduct. The potatoes are grown primarily for starch production, and the potato waste can then be used to extract a substance that is much more expensive than the starch itself. When we obtain cyanophycin with the help of bacteria, we have to cultivate the bacteria by adding nutrients and energy, which costs time and money. With potatoes, this work is performed by the sun in the field, and we don't need an extra single square centimeter of land. Are there any special risks associated with plants that produce industrial raw materials? No. You have to look at the risks for the individual trait and for the individual crop plant being used to produce these materials. You can't generalize. The risk will vary depending on the transferred trait. You have to assess each one individually. What risks could be a factor in relation to the Cyanophycin potato? The only thing we could imagine was that these potatoes might rot differently in the soil, because their sugar metabolism has been modified. This is important for the rotting process. Other than that, we cannot imagine that they would react differently to insects in any way, or that they would spread differently, since potatoes spread via their tubers. You conducted your research both in the field and the laboratory. What exactly did you do? After testing the plants for several years in the laboratory and in the greenhouse to observe their growth behavior and to see how much of the biopolymer they produce, we wanted to know whether the rotting process really does differ from that of the conventional control potatoes that don't produce this substance. So we sewed 30 potato tubers at a time into sacks, either the genetically modified variety or the control variety, and buried them at different depths. The sacks had holes big enough to let in earthworms and other organisms. Then, in November, we started digging up the sacks again. Each month we dug up one sack of each variety and had a look how the potatoes were doing. Were they rotting faster or slower? Were there the same number of earthworms? Were there other bacteria in the soil? What did the potatoes look like? What defense mechanisms were activated in the potato? How much tissue was still intact? What fungi were in the tubers? Did they differ from the ones in the control potatoes? So we always compared the genetically modified potatoes that produced the biodegradable plastic with the conventional potatoes from the same parent variety. What were the results of your 3-year research project? We discovered that in terms of earthworms, bacteria and fungi, the potatoes behave exactly like the control potatoes. We don't find any significant differences there, but the rotting speed correlates with the cyanophycin levels. In other words, if the potatoes produce a lot of this biopolymer, they rot faster than the ones that produce little or none of it. It means that these potatoes do not survive as well in the field as the non-genetically modified potatoes. So the probability of finding them as volunteers the following year is extremely small. The concept appears to work, and you have assessed the potential risks. Are there any economic prospects? Is there a chance that this potato will be placed on the market? The idea was to obtain more energy and more product from the same land, while using sustainable farming methods. Good crop rotations are important for sustainable farming. A large number of crops in Germany, however, have been dropped from crop rotation because they are not financially viable. The additional production of this biodegradable plastic could make these crops economically attractive again, and we could, for instance, establish sustainable crop rotations with nitrogen-fixing plants. That was the vision. That's why we're working on a large number of different crops that could be used in this kind of crop rotation, But at the moment, I don't see that we have any chance of bringing them onto the European market, even if the concept works extremely well on principle. I rather expect that we might benefit the agriculture in America or South America. Here in Europe, I don't see this for the moment. Thank you for talking to us.